Would the jury and the defendant remain standing? All others be seated, please.
May I inquire, Your Honor?
You may.
Members of the jury, have you agreed upon your verdict?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Officer, can you please have the verdict slips? What say you, Madam Forelady, as to indictment number 2183CR00153 on offense number 001, wherein the defendant, Christine Ricci, is charged with the crime of murder? Is she guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Guilty of what?
Murder in the second degree.
Thank you. As to offense number 002, wherein the defendant, Christine Ricci, is charged with the crime of assault and battery by means of a dangerous weapon. Is she guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Your Honor, may the verdict be affirmed.
Yes, they may.
Thank you. Members of the jury, hearken to your verdict as the court has so recorded it. You, upon your oath, do say that the defendant, Christine Ricci, is guilty of murder in the second degree on indictment number 2183CR00153, offense number 001. So say you, Madam Forelady.
Guilty.
So say you, all members of the jury.
Guilty.
You further, upon your oath, do say that the defendant, Christine Ricci, is guilty on indictment number 2183CR00153 on offense number 002 on the charge of assault and battery by means of a dangerous weapon. So say you, Madam Forelady.
Guilty.
So say you, all members of the jury.
Guilty.
Thank you. Your Honor, the verdict has been recorded and affirmed.
Jurors, you may be seated. Jurors, I want to thank each of you for the time that you have spent with us on this important matter and resolving this important matter. As I said to you in the closing remarks yesterday, you should have confidence in your abilities as jurors. I know that being a juror is a very difficult thing, and I appreciate all the sacrifices that you've made to be here and to resolve this case. And that includes the deliberating jurors and the alternate jurors. I'll be back in the jury room in a moment to get your feedback with regard to the case. I like to hear what we're doing well as a system for jurors, and more importantly, how we can improve our system and make your experience easier and better. So I'll be back to greet you and give you my personal thanks. I now lift off of you those rules. Your jury service is completed. And you can now speak to anyone about this case or no one at all. You can do any research you want about the case or none at all. And I'm supposed to tell you that you can now leave with not open minds or closed minds, but I hope and I know that you will go through your lives open to new people and new experiences. I'll be in the back in a moment. Thank you.
Court, all rise to the jury. This way.
Christine Ricci, convicted of murdering her husband, Boston firefighter Michael Ricci. Our verdict coverage continues next.
This is Court TV Live. I'm Matt Johnson in for Ted Rollins this week, and we begin with that breaking news, a guilty verdict for Christine Ricci. Let's get you back into court now, right where we left off.
Be seated.
I know you had no time to speak to the victims with regard to the case, but what's the Commonwealth seeking with regard to sentencing? When is what I'm asking. Or do you want a moment to speak to the victims?
If we could have a few moments, that would be great. I know Attorney Tim Bradle has been representing the three Ricci children. I just need to make sure that Is Your Honor inclined to potentially do sentencing today, or are you asking for?
I actually would prefer not to do the sentencing today, but I will do the sentencing today, or at least I want to take into consideration what the victim's views are with regard to that
Okay. And,
before I make a decision.
Okay.
Does the defense wish the sentencing to go forward today?
We have 2 members of my client's family that are here from out of state, so it would be better that it be done sooner from our perspective at least, but there is, and also we have, presumably though, there is an advantage to perhaps having the children here and giving them an opportunity to speak, so I leave it to Your Honor.
Why don't we get a little more information before we decide how we're going to proceed today? So I'll take a break. I'm going to speak to the jurors and send them on their way.
Thank you.
Anything else that we need to do at this moment?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you.
All rise, please.
All right, guilty there in the Commonwealth. You see the defendant, Christine Ricci, walking away. We haven't seen much motion from her during this whole trial process. Remember, she also did not testify. Still with us is opening statements anchor Julie Grant on the set with me. I mean, former prosecutor, you've done this time and time again. Right now, the focus is on the victims, which you always focus on. They're going to talk to the 3 family members, and they were on both sides of this.
Right.
What do you expect that to be like?
Right, Matt, this has been horrible for those children. I have to tell you, what we saw today, this was what we call in the criminal court system a slow plea. This was a woman who insisted on fighting this, but yet didn't fight it, didn't tell her side of the story, didn't produce any evidence, yet put her kids through the trauma of this tragedy all over again in the public forum of a trial. It is disgusting, and I think the indications we got from her son, Michael Ricci, referring to her not as mom, not even as Christine, but as the defendant, I think that tells us perhaps where the kids stand, Matt. And I wonder if they may want to get things over with today, or maybe because they've been through all this trouble already, maybe they want some time to speak about it. But I did find it odd that her attorney wanted to proceed quickly, because typically what we'll see in cases is that the court will order what's called a pre-sentence report or a pre-sentence investigation, and pretrial services will go through a person's history, and they go way back, Matt. I mean, they go way back to childhood. They look at any kind of difficulties, whether it be financial, mental health, you name it. They talk to friends, they talk to family, and they provide a comprehensive report to the court to inform the judge at the time of sentencing. But it tells me something that these attorneys are saying, no, let's just get this over with quickly. I want to say, what is going on here? Why are we at trial? Why wasn't this a plea if you want to do it all in one swoop today? So I can't wait to see what the state comes back with after talking with those children, Matt.
Especially, you know, because they didn't even put on a defense.
Right.
She called no witnesses, her attorney did not, and she chose not to take the stand, but yet they were victimizing the victim in all of this, or blaming him, victim blaming him, and calling him an alcoholic and saying that it was his fault. And then these kids had to live through that. So I hope they get back up on the stand if this sentencing happens today or even later. And I hope they talk about the good person that he was. And he had served the community also for more than 2 decades.
Matt, that's a really good point.
As we continue our discussion, just in case you're joining us right now, let's take a look back at that verdict.
What say you, Madam Forelady, as to indictment number 2183-CR-00153 on offense number 001, wherein the defendant, Christine Ricci, is charged with the crime of murder? Is she guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Guilty of what?
Murder in the 2nd degree.
Thank you. As to offense number 002, wherein the defendant, Christine Ricci, is charged with the crime of assault and battery by means of a dangerous weapon. Is she guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Your Honor, may the verdict be affirmed.
Yes, they may.
Thank you. Members of the jury, hearken to your verdict as the court has so recorded it. You, upon your oath, do say that the defendant, Christine Ricci, is guilty of murder in the 2nd degree on indictment number 2183-CR-00153, offense number 001. So say you, Madam Forelady.
Guilty.
So say you, all members of the jury.
Guilty.
You further, upon your oath, do say that the defendant, Christine Ricci, is guilty on indictment number 2183CR00153 on offense number 002 on the charge of assault and battery by means of a dangerous weapon. So say you, Madam Floor Lady.
Guilty.
So say you, all members of the jury.
Guilty.
Thank you. Your Honor, the verdict has been recorded and affirmed.
And joining us, our guest for this hour is Josh Schiffer, also standing by in Atlanta, Georgia, criminal defense attorney, friend of the show. You've heard what Julie had to say about this. What's your reaction to this guilty verdict?
Julie absolutely brings up what this was, and it was a long, slow plea. So how do we get there? Because it's a challenging bit of calculus. The state had such a strong case, and the brutality of the facts, the dynamics of this family, they're emotionally engaging for anyone. So it's not like the state had any reason at all to betray the taxpayers and the citizens by offering a gimme plea. They were going to do their job. So the defense's response to that was what we saw. A not aggressive defense. She wasn't ever going to stand up and take a plea and take accountability because there wasn't a plea that she could live with. And that's why we saw the trauma and tragedy of these kids having to go up and testify. This is absolutely heartbreaking. I can't imagine where the feelings and emotions of these children are and the other people that love the victim. And I'm proud of a jury for doing their job. Now the question is, how's the judge going to handle such a traumatic set of facts?
Yeah, you know, and it was a tragedy in that courtroom to listen to those kids talk about their home life and how they had to move out, and they were pointing the finger at mom. You do a lot of work in the domestic violence realm. Do you think that she was an abuser?
I do, Matt. I think that when she wasn't getting her way, she would try to use violence, and did in fact use violence, to try to control her husband. And it seemed that she got so obsessed with this affair and could not let it go. And as the great Tony Robbins always says, focus equals feeling, right? All her focus was on the affair, and she kept getting more and more worked up, and it was escalating. And when she would ask him questions again and again and wouldn't get the answers, or would be dismissed, or perhaps they had been over it 20 times before, then she would try to use violence to get the answers out of him. And it is just such a shame that this relationship and this beautiful family turned into such a toxic environment. And it seems to me that she not only turned into an abuser, but turned into a very selfish person, putting herself before her children. And I agree with everything that Josh shared, and Josh certainly knows this, practicing criminal defense work. Our constitutional rights are everything in America, and I don't want to minimize the rights that she has, protecting her, certainly. However, she had the freedom to choose to protect her kids. She had the freedom to say, you know what, I know I have a right to a trial, I know I have a right to witnesses coming in, and I can confront them, I can testify or not. Or perhaps I can be a mom and try to be a mom to my kids and protect my kids more than I already have, and accept some responsibility. And the fact that she didn't do that tells me she's not only an abuser, Matt, but a selfish abuser too.
Yeah, because she had them go on the stand and go through that whole process and relive that experience of living in that house and then the death of their father. And now they're possibly going to have to address her in court, someone that they used to call mom, and now they call the defendant, or did. Josh Schiffer, we know that she's in the back room talking to her attorneys after this guilty verdict. She didn't take the stand in her own defense. She didn't tell her story, even though this was a self-defense. You know, that's how they phrased it. But do you think that she's going to address the court?
You know, I wonder if she is going to take this opportunity, because she has been silent. Like Julie said, she made a choice to not accept responsibility. And well, is it a fair choice? Well, it depends on your perspective. I'm sure she felt that she was being mistreated by a system, but the system is forced to put people into the position the defendant found herself in. Because of her actions, she got to decide whether to take a result that was unlivable to her, or put her children through what we all watched. And that was a narcissistic tendency, like Julie's talking about. The selfishness of this mom, not only committing such a horrific crime and stealing from her children the joy of a parent, but then to make them go through this again, I feel that adds to the judge's calculus when determining a sentence, because the judge knows that what we just all witnessed was not the best use of resources, public resources. There was additional trauma imputed onto these children and the other people that had to work this case, and that's something that the defendant needs to account for. I think the judge has free rein to really swing hard on the sentencing.
Yeah, and to your point, Julie, when we were talking about the kids and taking the stand and her being a selfish person, a murderer. She's convicted, murderer.
Right.
And putting her kids through that. I think the best example, and we'll talk about it on the other side, is Michael Ricci Jr., if we can play that.
The fact that the affair kept being brought up was keeping you from being able to go back to the way things were before the affair.
Well, I'm not one to look to go back to the past. I mean, it'd be nice to not have that be brought up every single day.
Right. And you felt like your mother was bringing it up every day, and you really started to have a feeling of resentment towards your mother because she kept bringing it up after you had decided that you wanted to kind of go back to the way things were.
Well, it wasn't just because of that. There were other variables at hand even before the stuff with that.
Okay, but you did have, in 2018 into 19, you did have some resentment towards your mother based on the way she handled getting over the affair.
That was a factor, yes. That was the only thing.
You had other reasons for resenting your mother, but there's no question that by the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, you had a lot of resentment for your mother.
She was getting aggressive in the fights, yes.
I really hope that these kids are getting some help and talking to a counselor, because it's really hard for lay people to take the stand, and especially if you've been victimized by your parent.
Right. Oh, you're absolutely right, Matt. They need a tremendous amount of counseling and support. And hopefully they will have a big support system, professional support, and also lay people that love them, family members, friends, who are going to rally around them because they've been through multiple traumas. I mean, think about it. They grew up with a father who suffered from alcoholism. Wasn't easy seeing that. Then a mother who went to pieces over an affair and punished them. I mean, she was trying to punish him. She was trying to punish Michael Ricci, her husband, but she ended up punishing the whole family because of her conduct. The attempts at self-harm, I mean, the things these kids have seen, and then the ultimate punishment, the killing of their dad. I mean, they have been through so much. They're going to need to do some real hearing and have some very tender self-care and care from mental health professionals to try to live a healthy life, because what they've been exposed to is what they know. Their normal was toxicity, unfortunately. Their normal growing up was violence, alcoholism, attempts at self-harm. They are beautiful children who deserve the very best at this life, and I certainly hope the Boston community will give them the support that they need as they seek that help, as you mentioned, Matt.
Yeah, and in your opinion, do you think that this was just passion, opportunity, or do you think it was calculated? Because I'm wondering if the attempts at self-harm were actual attempts at self-harm or also calculated control.
I think it was heat of passion crime. And I think that's what the jury said in their verdict with the second-degree murder, that this wasn't something that she plotted out. I don't think she chose that day and said, this is going to be the day that I do it. I think that she was out of control. As we heard Michael say in that clip, on a daily basis, she would bring it up and then get out of control with these fights. And perhaps it did start with an attempt at self-harm. Maybe that was why she grabbed the knife. I mean, we'll never know the full truth, will we? Because she didn't testify, right? And sadly, Michael Ricci's deceased. But maybe she started at an attempt to harm herself, and maybe he tried to stop her, and then maybe it escalated. But at some point, she did act with intentionality. He didn't slip into that knife or lunge into it. That was the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. And how do you explain the mark on the back, the second stab wound, right? She
Two
did
different
this.
knives.
Exactly, Matt. She did this, and then she lied about it to the first responders who could have potentially had a chance at maybe saving him sooner.
That's what I wanted to talk about next, because let's please play the clip from Sophia, who recanted hearing a fight, and then I think she was the one that called 911 because her mom instructed her to. So.
Do you remember typically what your parents would argue about?
About the drinking.
And what else?
The affair.
Other than the loud voices you heard on the date of January 28th, 2021, what, if any, other sounds did you hear downstairs?
I heard movement and banging.
Movement and what?
Banging.
Banging?
Yes.
Okay. Who called your name?
My mom.
And other than calling your name, did she yell anything else to you at that time?
No, she just called my name for me to come downstairs.
And what did her voice sound like?
She sounded very panicked.
Did you see any blood on your father?
No, I did not.
Okay. Did you see any blood on your mother?
No, I did not.
And I know you indicated you didn't see any injuries on your father. What, if any, injuries did you see on your mother? Anything?
No, I did not see any injuries.
So no injuries, and her story was through her attorney, is that she was trying to inflict self-harm, and then there was this scuffle, and that he fell onto the knife, 2 different knives. But so the mom doesn't disclose to the first responders that could have saved his life, perhaps, that he's been stabbed. So Josh Schiffer, same question to you. Do you think that it was premeditated? Do you think that it was passion? What do you think?
I think the state could have been more aggressive, but instead made the right charging decisions to get the strongest case possible in front of that jury, and they succeeded in that. You can certainly see an argument where her allegations of consistent long-term abuse would give rise to the idea that she was setting this up. The self-harm was part of a plan to gather support and consideration to defend her for what she knew was eventually going to be a violent and tumultuous act. But just because that's colorable and believable and a good theory and story of a case doesn't mean that's what the state needs to bring. And I will congratulate the prosecutors for proper charging decisions. That's something we talk about a lot on the defense and just criminal justice in general, because the power to decide the charges lies with the state. And the fashion in which the state chooses to proceed, that totally sets up what the defense is going to respond with. And in this case, rather than going for a really aggressive, maximum scorched earth prosecution, they stepped back, made a case that made a lot of sense, and really prevented her, unless she wanted to stand up and get eviscerated on cross-examination, go with this manslaughter. I think that it is or second-degree murder, rather. I think that it was a really good performance by the state, and it's a state which needs a good performance from its prosecutors right now.
Yeah, that's something that Julie Grant always talks about on your show, right?
Right. Charging, yeah, I agree with everything Josh said, yes. They could have charged premeditated murder. He's right. They could have said premeditation happens in an instant. She could have just instantly decided, now we're going to take this fight, to the lethal level. But Josh is right. They were smart, and they said, this is what we definitively have. This seems like a heat of passion crime where she got so out of control in that instant and so enraged because of the infidelity that she plunged that knife into his body.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate all around.